please like and subscribe. Chapter 6, New Quest, Spreading Terror. Tap tap tap. The knocking on the door of this small room kept repeating in a delayed and creepy rhythm as the two men inside it were enjoying their panic attacks and shivering as they hugged each other, while the boy who was doing couldn't help but think in doubt, am I already starting to get used to how I look? But his hand never stopped his rhythmic knocking. Tap tap tap. This eerie situation lasted for a while, but surprisingly it suddenly stopped as the cause of it seemed to be frozen while looking at the empty air for some unfathomable reason, with a bittersweet look plastered on his face. One magenta-haired woman in particular that was watching him closely from the top of the stairs couldn't help but feel creeped out at the unpredictable behavior of the ghost-like kid in front of her and his strange ability to make even the feared demon lord and his great demon general cower like this in their stronghold, and she started to doubt that she could make an ally out of this monstrosity. This was of course the hero of Isla Emilia, and she was going to get the scare of her life. As she kept watching these unfolding events while holding her hands close to her chest nervously, Yuki's sunken green eyes suddenly started shining with an eerie light as his bony cheeks suddenly stretched out, forming an inhuman smile on his face that could be used as a torturing tool if someone didn't fear being cursed or his phone breaking if they took a picture of it. But this wasn't all, and a creepy laugh started slowly escaping from his parched lips and throat that didn't have anything to drink the whole day, and to the listeners, it felt like something was scratching their eardrums. He he he, he he he. Emilia couldn't help but take a few hurried steps back when faced with this creepiness that was over 9,000 in power, but this weird situation made her forget that the stairs were right behind her and she ended up stumbling and falling down the stairs in a pathetic state. HSSS, this hurts, whispered Emilia while slowly getting up to a sitting position while holding her head in pain, not knowing that her new nightmare was slowly approaching. Meanwhile inside room 201. When they heard someone falling down the stairs, Mao and Ashiya, who were also creeped out from Yuki's laugh, immediately thought of Emilia, who followed them to this world and kept stalking them whenever she had time off from work, and suddenly looked at each other in delight as Mao eventually said with a hopeful face, Ashiya, the hero is here to save us. Yes my lord, we are going to be saved. I bet you she cut that ghost in half already and threw him down the stairs. These two are a disgrace to the word demon. Yuki thought as he listened to what these two idiots were bragging about and actually okay with themselves relying on their mortal enemy, and without Yuki noticing, they were slowly approaching the door trying to check if that dangerous ghost was dealt with or not. But to their disappointment, when they looked out of the hole, they witnessed the creepiest scene yet this night. It was the scene of his head turning slowly in the direction of the stairs where the voice of someone falling had just echoed, with an even creepier smile on his face while his body stayed rooted in place, before he started walking towards the stairs slowly. Nah my lord, he actually defeated Hero Emilia, and he's going to finish her off. What should we do now? Ashiya's fear grew exponentially at the thought that there's someone who can easily defeat the hero, and he felt his heart was going to burst out of his chest as it kept beating like a drum, especially when they heard Emilia scream in fear right after. WWE should save her, said Mao, trying to put a courageous face, and Ashiya actually bought into it and said, my lord, your kindness touches my humble heart, even willing to go as far as saving your mortal enemy. This humble servant is in awe of your courage and kindness. However, Mao had the logic of a demon and he never intended to sacrifice himself, and as he was sweating hard, he quickly grabbed his dear General Ashiya and put him in front of him to use him as a human shield if the situation suddenly goes south, before he said, let's go. Ashiya immediately understood that he was merely a little lamb that was going to be sacrificed at any moment if his lord finds himself in danger. What was I thinking? He's the demon lord for a reason, but I can't die such a pitiful death. Sorry my lord, but you forced me to do this. So with a tragic look on his face, Ashiya quickly turned around and started pushing Mao to the door instead as he said, my lord, you should go on your own, these noble pursuits are beyond wicked demons such as myself. Mao had an annoyed expression on his face as he said, you call throwing garbage a noble purpose, but when you are faced with a real one, you wimp out, you piece of garbage. Fine, I will go on my own. Mao thought that by saying this, Ashiya's pride would get hurt and decide to reconsider his decision and follow him to face this incredible foe that took down the hero on his own. Yet, to no surprise, this demon general of his had no pride at all, nor did he care about such things, and before Mao could react, he was pushed out of the room and Ashiya quickly locked the door, with only his tearful voice reaching Mao's ears like a helpless wife. I believe in you, my lord. Come back safely. You piece of shit, opened the door immediately, seeing his reverse psychology has failed him. Ma started panicking and kept banging on the door with fear and horror filling his face, but Ashia simply sat at the corner of the room holding his head with his arms tightly and kept whispering, "I sent my lord to his death. What am I doing? I'm a failure, a failure. TCH, this bastard actually locked me out. It seems I'm alone in this," whispered Mao before he turned to the direction of the stairs and steeled his heart to take a look at what was going on while swallowing his saliva. Meanwhile, as Yuki was marveling at the new quest that suddenly popped up, which created the appearance that he was looking at the air absent-minded, he was getting more and more excited at the new possibilities this mean system had to offer, even though the punishment was cruel as before. So, overwhelmed with delight, he started grinning, and eventually, a hearty laugh escaped his parched throat, or at least that's how he perceived these simple events that terrorized everyone else. Quest, Seed of Terror. Quest description: your appearance could wake the dead from their slumber, so use it to its full extent and show the world what pure terror is. Quest task: plant a seed of terror in at least 2 protagonists, which will make them have a certain level of fear towards you. Time limit, 3H. Quest reward, skill, Dark Shield plus additional reward if the user overperforms. Quest punishment, if the quest fails. Minus 0.3 to all attributes. Note, best of luck. This is great, I can actually get skills from completing quests. But what kind of skill is this D-? However, before he could even finish his thought and try checking out what this skill Dark Shield does, he heard the sound of someone falling down the stairs and moaning in pain. "Oh, my first prey is already here." Yuki couldn't help but grin happily as he looked in the direction of the stairs where the voice was coming from before he started slowly walking towards them. "This hurts, I'm going to get many bruises from this fell," whispered Emilia to herself while sitting on the floor in front of the staircase, completely oblivious to what was approaching her, but she suddenly froze and felt like her brain was short-circuited as she started hearing the sound of someone coming down the stairs. Tap tap tap. For some reason, whatever was coming down the stairs was taking its time and pausing slightly between each step as the sound of heavy breathing echoed, causing the fear she was feeling to intensify by a 100-fold, and she couldn't even muster the courage to move or raise her head to see what was the source of this noise, but she had a guess, a terrifying guess. But the stairs would eventually end, and as whatever was coming down grew closer and closer, Emilia was so frozen in fear that her eyes started watering and she almost pissed herself as she kept thinking to herself, "Please go away, don't come near me, please." Until the sound suddenly stopped at the last step right in front of her and only the heavy breathing continued. "Ha ha ha. Hey, am I going to die? Sorry father, I couldn't avenge you and kill the demon lord," thought Emilia as tears started falling down the sides of her cheeks, overwhelmed with regret at the thought of prematurely dying before completing the main mission in her life, which is to rid the world of the evil demon lord Satan and his army of demons. Suddenly, long white dirty hair started dangling in front of her and she could see it from her peripheral vision, even with her face looking at the ground, but caused to be even more creeped out is when that slightly touched her. And what followed next was the KO as a withered, bony and pale hand suddenly touched her cheeks, trying to wipe away her tears, and the shivering Emilia resigned to her fate and unwillingly raised her head to look at what was in front of her. But, she immediately regretted this decision and ended up letting out a primal scream from the bottom of her heart as she saw those bloodshot sunken eyes looking at her as if from another world, a world of the dead. And the creepy sensation of the bony hand and the disheveled hair touching her face. She simply couldn't take it anymore and felt like something broke inside her, and she let all her bottled emotions out. For some reason, she felt a surge of courage and strength flowing through her body from an unknown source. It was the rush of adrenaline that only comes in a life-or-death situation. And Emilia immediately stood up and started running with tears and snot falling down her face without looking back at all. Meanwhile, the person she ran away from couldn't help but show a puzzled look on his face as he thought, "I didn't do anything yet. What's going on?" So he started wondering about what just happened until he came up with a simple conclusion. It seems like this kid is quite suited to be a poster boy for birth control. Chapter 7, Solving the Misunderstanding. Yuki stood speechless at the stairs of the Rosa Villa building as he observed the beautiful woman that he recognized as the mighty hero of the world and Isla that defeated the demon lord and his forces and even forced him to escape to this normal world that doesn't have any magic. not to mention that she could kill him with a flick of her finger. Yet, right now she was running away from him as if he's some kind of cursed object or plague that was going to bring an end to her life and the world. This incident really destroyed his confidence in whatever future he was going to have while living inside this shitty body, at least until it recovers to a decent shape. What's wrong with this woman? I was just trying to help her stand up and see if she got herself injured, yet she starts screaming and runs away like that as if I was trying to molest her. Geez, hopefully, this won't cause a misunderstanding and end with the cops at my doors. I really don't want to deal with any extra trouble. Yuki thought in worry, puzzled by what just happened and disappointed by how his good intentions were met by the complete opposite effects. After all, when he heard her falling down the stairs, at first he was indeed intending to scare the living hell out of her to fulfill the requirement of the mission he just received, Seed of Terror, and get himself a new skill with some additional rewards if possible. After all, he really needed to finish this quest as the sneaky system made it so that the punishment for failure is minus 0.3 to all attributes, and that's just enough to turn his vitality into 0, and Yuki didn't want to find out what will happen at that point. But then he saw her pitiful state, and with her being so cute and beautiful softened his heart, so he decided to offer her some help instead of scaring her. But this body of his was in so much pain from the ruined state it was in and all the efforts he did today to find a new apartment, to the point that he couldn't help but take deep breaths every time he came down a stair as they increased the pain, so he decided to slow down his movement as much as possible. Even though there was the recent completion of the settlement quest which helped him recover a little, it was still painful enough to simply exist in this body, not to mention use it, as it would cause that pain to intensify. But who would have thought that this girl who had unmatched courage would start shivering and crying out of nowhere as he tried to approach her, so he was worried that something might have happened to her. Yet, when Yuki approached her to lift her face and see what's going on, she jumped to her feet and ran at a speed no normal human could wish to mimic, leaving him behind at the bottom of the stairs, standing there alone like an idiot. Quest Seed of Terror Progress 1 of 2. A notification suddenly sounded in his head which brought back some of the lost morale that was crushed by that hero's behavior, but he was still in quite the sour mood, especially when he thought about all the pain he was going to experience when he starts climbing the stairs to go to the second floor again. But he suddenly heard the sound of the door opening upstairs and getting slammed shut again, while a young voice he now understood belonged to Mao kept begging for it to reopen and repeating it over and over, yet it never happened as his friend seemed to have betrayed him and completely ignored his pleas. So, in a bad mood, he started walking upstairs again, which made all voices cease to exist suddenly other than his delayed steps and the heavy breaths he inhaled in pain, which created a terrifying atmosphere for a certain demon who froze in fear in front of the door of his room and started to panic. "Ashiya, please open the door, please," begged Mo inside his head, but the door remained closed and the steps slowly approached him until a head suddenly appeared in his field of vision and with a dried voice started speaking. "What's the point in living anymore? Tell me. I need an answer." It's a vengeful spirit." Mao simply turned around and kept banging on the door, while Alciel, who also heard what I said, simply kneeled down and started praying for forgiveness with a devoted look on his face, completely denying his identity as a demon. Mao kept screaming and screaming as he banged repeatedly on the door for Ashiya to open it. Yet, it was to no avail, as it never opened, and he eventually stopped when he felt a bony hand suddenly land on his shoulders as a head suddenly approached his ears and whispered in a low voice, "Answer me." Hearing his whisper and feeling the creepy breath hitting the back of his neck, Mao finally had enough of it and was ready to unleash the last bit of magic he was reserving for emergencies in case Amelia tried to pick a fight with to heroically kill this hellish ghost, even if he ends up dying along with it. And Ashiya, who was devotedly praying, sensed this and looked at the direction of the door in anticipation. But just as Mao started conjuring his magic to create a huge detonation and blast the oblivious Yuki with it, an angry voice suddenly came from the stairs that seemed about to give out from the heavy weight of the person climbing them. "Mao-kun, what's all this screaming about? Are you trying to get yourself kicked out of the building?" Mao never thought that he could find this round purple object so pleasing to the eye in his life, as he immediately rushed to her and hid behind her, using her as his new human shield, and said, "TT, there's a vengeful ghost in the building, Shiba-san, and it snuck on me and started questioning me about life. He even killed my biggest enemy." Nikki looked at him with an amused smile as she thought, how's a demon scared from a human? But then she shot Yuki a look and couldn't help but have a weird feeling in her heart as she looked at his appearance. While he certainly looks the part, before she said with a smile, "What's going on, Yuki-kun? Is Mao-kun telling the truth?" Yuki shot Mao a weird look and he almost called him a bitch before he replied to her with a creepy smile as his dry voice echoed, "It's a misunderstanding, Mickey T. I was depressed from how that woman ran away from me for no reason, so I was just wondering if there's still any reason for me to live with such a terrible appearance. This guy's dangerous." He actually called her Mickey T without throwing up. How resilient, what a strong mind, Mao thought in amazement. What he didn't know, however, is that Yuki was fortunate enough to have an empty stomach, as he didn't eat anything for a while. Otherwise, he would have thrown up everything he ever ate by now. "I see. Well, Mao-kun, Yuki-kun is a new resident here in Villa Rosa Sasuzuka. You should make him feel welcomed instead of treating him like some kind of ghost, and stop screaming. It's already nighttime and I don't want to deal with the cops, understood?" Mao seemed genuinely surprised that Yuki was simply a new resident and not some kind of vengeful ghost walking the earth and trying to hunt innocent young demon lords like him. And after having a strong and long internal struggle, he finally realized that he was just a malnourished kid and this might all be a misunderstanding, but for some reason, even though his mind accepted this, his heart just couldn't as he looked at the flickering green sunken eyes of this kid that seemed to be dazed while looking at the emptiness in front of him. "And nice to meet you, Yuki-kun," said Mao, who wasn't using Mickey as his human shield anymore and slightly bowed politely in greeting. "Nice to meet you, Mao-san. I hope we can get along and be good neighbors to each other," Yuki replied with a smile and returned the bow, but when Mao and Mickey looked at it, they couldn't help but feel their spine going numb, especially when his face was covered with his hair, leaving only two eerie green eyes observing them. "Okay, you kids, don't cause any more trouble, or I will kick you both out, okay? And there won't be any more warnings," said Mickey before she turned around and left, to the horror of Mao. But he was then relieved when Ashiya, who overheard this conversation, opened the door with a holy expression plastered on his face from all of the prayers he was shooting out like a machine gun earlier while leaving his lord to fend for himself. "Well, see you later, Yuki-kun," said Mao as he shot Ashiya a disgusted look and quickly entered his room, while Yuki simply nodded at him and kept staring at Ashiya in silence, who noticed this, so he nodded at Yuki and quickly closed the door behind him. Once inside the room, Mao finally exhaled a sigh of relief and looked angrily at Ashiya, and started complaining, "Alciel, I thought you were my most loyal subordinate, yet you actually betrayed me when I needed you the most. I'm truly disappointed." Ashiya didn't seem bothered at all with what Mao just said, and with a disinterested look on his face and eyes closed, he sat at a corner of the room that was coincidentally facing the window that overlooked the corridor and heroically said, "I'm a follower of a higher power now. My heart is filled with the holiness of the Lord. And my mission shall be the eradication of devils and demons and all that's evil from the world to bring peace to the people." Mao could almost see a golden halo appear on top of Ashiya's face as he yelled at him, "You are a demon yourself, you idiot, and why didn't you try eradicating the evil that was standing right outside your door, you piece of shit?" At this point, Ashiya started opening his eyes while saying, "Demon or not, it's all in the heart. And having the intent to eradicate evil is the first essay dash," but then he saw a silhouette with long hair leaning against the window with its hands and staring at him from behind the shade of the window, which sent a shiver down his spine as he immediately ran and hid behind Mao and hugged his legs before he started talking in an extremely fast voice, better than most rappers, as tears fell down from his eyes. "My lord, please forgive me, I'm sorry, I will always be your humble servant and never betray you again. Please tell that creepy thing to stop staring at me, please, I will do anything." "You two-faced bastard," cursed Mao, realizing that he was indeed living with a demon before he fearfully started approaching the window. Chapter 8, Dinner with the Demon Lord. When Mickey and Mao went back to their own apartment and left Yuki alone in the corridor, he couldn't help but smile excitedly as he was reading the notification that appeared after Mao shat in his pants while he was whispering gently in his ear. Quest Seed of Terror, completed, February 2nd. Host didn't overperform, so there will be no additional rewards. Accept reward, yes/no. For better or for worse, this quest didn't require any effort from Yuki, which made him realize just how bad the situation of his current body was to actually scare demons and heroes without even trying, but at least it wasn't racist and he didn't discriminate between anyone. Then, he suddenly remembered that there could be additional rewards if he scares more protagonists, and it just so happens that there's one right over there pretending to become a saint when he found himself faced with such a difficult situation. Sorry Ashiya, but you deserve it anyways, thought Yuki before he started conjuring all kinds of evil ideas inside his head while looking around the outside of their apartment trying to find a way to creep Ashiya out, and he ended up noticing that each room had a sliding window that was painted so people can't see what's inside, but it wasn't blocking all vision, and Yuki immediately thought of the perfect way to use it. A classic horror movie scene where a shadowy figure with long dark hair suddenly leans on your bedroom window with its hand on the window and maybe some blood dripping before lightning strikes behind it and shows its true disgusting form to the world. Unfortunately, Yuki didn't have that kind of special effect, but he emulated the move perfectly as he got the correct body type for it, and he stuck his body into the window and kept staring at Ashiya's barely visible silhouette that was pretending to be preying on the corner until he ran and hid behind his now dear Lord Mao. A few seconds later, after Mao kept trying to get rid of Ashiya who was stuck to his legs for dear life, he reluctantly approached the window and opened it slightly while gulping his saliva as he said, "Do you need something, Yuki-kun?" Yuki almost couldn't bother listening to what Mao said as he was focusing on the quest notification that appeared in front of him showing an update in the Quest Seed of Terror. Quest Seed of Terror, completed, March 2nd. Host has overperformed by scaring another protagonist more than what was required during the time limit, so there will be additional rewards. Accept reward, yes/no. While Yuki was absent-mindedly reading the new changes in his quest details oblivious to his surrounding, from Mao's point of view this behavior appeared very creepy, so he started backing away from Yuki slowly, which ended up alerting him to his presence instead. Yuki, having achieved his goal and noticed that Mao was getting weirded out by him again, didn't want to have any more drama or misunderstanding, so he said with the best apologetic face he could muster, "Oh, sorry Mao-san, I'm hungry, and to be honest I'm in no condition to go out and buy food. Can I join you for dinner today? I can pay you for it if necessary." "That's right, it's a miracle this kid isn't dead already, but can't you find any better way to ask other than this one?" Thinking to this point, Mao had a weird look on his face as he stared at Yuki, but then it turned into a smirk. Still, that bastard Ashiya truly deserved it. But just as Mao was about to respond and agree to Yuki's request, as he felt apologetic at almost erasing him from the face of the earth with his magic, Ashiya's nervous voice suddenly sounded from behind him and said, "My lord, we can't invite this bad omen into our fortress, we dash." But he suddenly stopped talking when Yuki turned to stare at him and said in an ominous tone with his dry voice, "Badomen? SSS sorry. Please forgive me." Ashiya bowed his head and started begging as if Yuki was going to curse him and his 9 generations. TCH, is this really a demon general? Doubts started rising inside Yuki's head, but it wasn't just him, because even Mao was disappointed by his general's behavior. So, Yuki suddenly found his stare down interrupted when Mao shot Ashiya a cold look before he turned to Yuki with a smile and like a great neighbor said, "Please come in, we don't have much to provide, but it's still better than nothing, nothing." This guy already recollected his calm. What a scary man. Yuki couldn't help but stare in wonder at this guy who already seemed to have forgotten everything that just happened and was acting like a perfect citizen once more. "Well then, thank you for your hospitality, I will make sure to repay this favor in the future," Yuki said with his smile that creeped out Ashiya even more, oblivious that Mao's the one paying him back for almost taking his life, and it was the cheapest payback ever for such a big offense. Just like that, Yuki entered their room and sat on the ground facing Mao with a table between them while Ashiya started cooking dinner and turning to look at Yuki from time to time in case he tries to stab him in the back, or so he thought. These two seems to have just gotten to this world, seeing that the one-room apartment they are living in has the barest of necessities. Not to mention that their third troublesome roommate isn't here yet, so none of the dangerous incidents that occurred in the anime happened yet, so I have to be careful in the future, especially since I don't know when exactly they will happen. Seeing that he was deep in thought while looking around the apartment, Mao decided to break the weird silence and asked Yuki about his appearance. "Yuki-kun, how did you end up like this?" This question came as no surprise to Yuki, and he wasn't really bothered by telling him the truth since he didn't do anything wrong, so he directly said, "I used to be a drug addict and spent all my parents' inheritance doing wrong things until I ended up in this shitty state." The incredibly smart Mao seemed surprised when Yuki told him that his current state was because of drugs instead of some kind of curse or being possessed by demons, but then he started analyzing everything he said and piecing it together without any further change in his facial expression. "So, his parents are dead, huh? And now he probably has no money, and Shiba-san accepted him out of goodwill the same way she did to us, and there was no sadness when he mentioned drugs, so he probably solved his addiction problems, but at what price? His thoughts ended with him looking at Yuki's haggard appearance as drowned one cup of water after another as if he didn't drink in days. By the way, Mao-san, do you know any place where I could work part-time? The school will start in around 2 weeks, so I can't work a full-time job, but a part-time one will do fine until I get my life back on track. That's true. The only redeeming character of this kid Yuki is that even though he ruined his life with all kinds of destructive behavior, he actually still managed to graduate from junior high with passable grades, and this year he was supposed to enter high school, but he was taking a long trip to hell instead. And because he kept getting into all kinds of trouble, he wasn't accepted in school dormitories, which forced him to find an apartment, and then that responsibility fell on his head with the sweat threat of death lurking behind him all the time, which was mentally draining. Oh, that's right, Shiho-chan seemed to have talked about school and was quite excited about being a high schooler, so you might actually end up as classmates. Anyways, it hasn't been long since I started working at a fast food chain called MG Ronald. Try applying there, you've got a high chance of getting employed, especially with your identity as a student. Mao decided not to comment on Yuki's appearance, which could probably cause many people's heart attacks if he takes them by surprise and drive every last customer away from the restaurant. But even though Mao didn't mention it, Yuki was clear about his current situation, especially after he saw the reaction he got from this demon lord and the hero, so he decided to fix himself first before going to apply for a job. Meanwhile, Ashiya was sweating heavily at how courageous his lord was to be capable of talking to this monster and go as far as to invite him to work with him. I can expect nothing less from the demon lord. You are truly on a league of your own, Mao-sama, that's right. This is why you are worthy of my loyalty. Ashiya's mind was full of heroic thoughts, and if Mao getting over his fear is a great feat, this guy getting over his hypocrisy is a miracle for the ages. Then Ashiya started preparing dinner even faster, with his eyes twinkling in admiration, completely forgetting that he just betrayed Mao moments ago and didn't mind sacrificing him, and even switched camps easily. You mentioned Shiho-chan? Is she also entering Sasahata North High School? Mao couldn't help but gulp and nod his head nervously, as he had a bad feeling about where this conversation was going. Oh, it's the same school I'm going to attend. Maybe we will even be classmates, Yuki said with a genuine smile, which made Mao start wishing good luck to Chiho on what she was going to experience in her near future. What Mao didn't know, however, is that she would be in far greater danger, and Yuki won't be the source of it. Instead, it's going to be his demon general Lucifer. Shiho Sasaki, huh? Yuki couldn't help but remember that female protagonist who, different from the rest of the characters in the anime, actually had nothing really special about her other than her big boobs. Shiho's a very cute, petite, an average teenage girl of short stature with shoulder-length light auburn hair that has 2 locks branching out from each side, where each side is held in place by dark blue ribbons tied into simple bows, big ember eyes, and she sports a highly curvaceous figure with large breasts, a fact which is noted by several people and envied by other girls. But then Yuki narrowed his eyes as he thought she's also the only normal protagonist in this series, and was madly in love with Mao and stayed like that even when she was told about all the atrocities and crimes he committed back in Isla, and to add insult to injury, Mom didn't even seem to share the same feelings, nor does he seem to have any feelings at all in general if I remember correctly, and he appears to be simply acting in the way this society assumes is proper. Yuki's green sunken eyes suddenly looked directly at Mao's blood-red eyes, who had a seemingly clueless look on his face as he tried to look through him. Just what is your true nature? Unbeknown to Yuki, Mao too was asking himself this same question. And as a wise man once said, attitude is the mask of the heart, and Mao's mask was too thick for Yuki to look through with a simple glance, so he ended up gaining no information from this casual stare down, and hopefully, neither did Mao. Chapter 9, Reflecting and Disappointment. After Yuki had a simple dinner with Mao and Ashiya, and they got to know each other a little bit more, and he was surprised to find himself treating them like normal people, and he came to the realization, if I didn't have my knowledge from the anime and simply met them here, it's possible that I would have never realized how dangerous these two could actually be. I need to be careful around the people I meet in the future. Who knows, maybe other weird creatures are living like normal people. Then, Yuki thanked them for their hospitality, if it could even be called as such when your host is blatantly afraid of you and keeps a distance from you in case you want to try something. You are a demon, for God's sake. The best I could do to harm you is maybe cast a silent fart with my legendary magic as I'm leaving your apartment, tch. Thought Yuki helplessly. After he left their apartment, Yuki finally took out the key that Mickey handed to him and opened the door to room 202, and once inside, he almost felt like he was back to those guys' apartment when he saw the completely empty room, which wasn't much different from theirs. Well, at least I'm alive. I will think about getting a better apartment when I settle down properly in this new world and find a stable income, thought Yuki, hopeful for his future. But then he couldn't help but start thinking about all the events that occurred one after another, and he almost felt like he was in a dream. First, he was killed by a serial killer in his sleep. Then he ended up miraculously helping in catching him from whatever grave he was thrown into because he planted a hidden camera in his house's back door for fun. Then he ended up meeting the mysterious orb Karma, and what a sweet moment it was. That bitch actually sent him through a black hole that made him puke his innards out while staying paralyzed for 2 whole days without even apologizing, but he still missed it for some reason. Then he discovered the weirdness of the people in this world, but before he could even contemplate it, he was kicked out of the apartment that the previous Yuki turned into a shithole. And today, out of the many events that happened, from energy strengthening his body to facing the threat of death, and meeting that purple thing, what fascinated him the most and he was still finding unbelievable was that he actually met a demon. And a demon lord at that. One that terrorized a whole world to the point that he had an anime made after him. Not to mention he scared him, and then they actually talked in front of a table like any normal people would, but he knew deep inside his heart that he was trying to figure him out even though he didn't show it on his face. But most unnerving than all of this was that even that guy Ashiya that seemed so afraid of him, he can crush him like a bug if he wanted to, even with his current state that was almost deprived of his mana because of its absence in this world. I need to adjust my mentality to this new life of mine as soon as possible. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know what killed me or how. Thought Yuki, and oh, if he only knew how close he was to death if Mickey didn't arrive just in time. Finished with his thoughts, and with a not-so-empty stomach like it was before, he was finally able to check his system's interface and accept the rewards from the quest. Yuki was tempted to try and overperform even more, but after some contemplation, he decided otherwise. After all, he can't try to find another protagonist in 3 hours in this huge world, nor did he have the energy to do so. Well, technically he could try to find Shiho, but that's only possible if he asks Mao, and the last thing he wants is to make that guy even more suspicious of him. So, he better accepts his reward and gets rid of this mission before he loses 0.3 points to all his attributes and go meet his maker. Quest Seed of Terror, completed, March 2nd. Accept reward, yes/no. Yes. You received the skill Dark Shield. You received an additional reward, 1 skill point. What's with this skill point I received as an additional reward? Well, let's check out the skill first. Yuki opened up the system's status window and he noticed that there were 4 new additions. Name, Yuki Chibana, Robin Peterson. Strength, 0.6, 0.9. Speed 0.6, 0.9. Vitality, 0.3, 0.8. Soul, 2. Magic, 0. Mana, 0. Skills, Dark Shield, 1/10, plus. Skill points 1. Description, in a weakened state, better than earlier but still useless. Oh, there are many additions, magic, mana? But what's the point of having them if they are 0? Yuki was perplexed by this and didn't like where it was going so far, but he decided to keep scrolling down and check out all the additions first. Skill points, huh? Well, I guess if I click on the plus sign beside the skill, it will use the skill point to make it stronger or something, huh? Well, let's see the skill's description then. Yuki was excited about testing out this new skill, so without any foreplay, he clicked on the name of the skill, which caused a new window to appear under it that contained a detailed description of the skill. Dark Shield, 1/10, an active skill that creates a shield around the target and absorbs the next 80, plus 50% of magic, elemental damage while active, doesn't work against physical attacks. Dark Shield prevents the application of all disables. Lasts 5 seconds or until the shield has been depleted. Cost, 80 mana. Cooldown, 20 seconds. Yuki felt his excitement deflating and dropping down to dangerous degrees like never before as he started cursing the system and his luck non-stop. Fuck my life. What's the point of giving me a skill if I can't even use it? And how am I supposed to learn magic and gain mana in a world that doesn't have them? TCH. Yuki thought he was going to become a great sorcerer. Well, that was an obvious exaggeration, but at least he would have a way to protect himself in this dangerous world. but now he couldn't help but think it seems like I'm really destined to become a ghost. Sigh, what a waste of my time. If this world is the same as in the anime, it doesn't contain mana, something even the protagonists found trouble with, so if I want to gain it, or even learn how to use it, I will have to visit an Isla, but that's simply a death wish. I want to smash my head into a wall. Yuki held his head in his hands while thinking about what could happen to him if on a whim, the two demons beside him felt like eating human flesh one day and he wouldn't be able to protect himself. I can't keep thinking about this, maybe I will find a way to learn magic in the future, but for now I need to focus on getting my health back on track and not bother with anything else that's beyond my control. And so, burying his worries deep inside his heart, Yuki started layering some of his clothes on the floor to create a makeshift bed, as he thought, I really need to acquire many supplies. Before he laid down and was immediately assaulted by a wave of intense fatigue that his body accumulated throughout his time in this world, so he immediately passed out and didn't wake up the next day until the sun has fully risen. Early next morning, Ma woke up to go to work and said goodbye to Ashiya, who had bags under his eyes, clearly from a lack of sleep. Ashiya kept having nightmares about a ghost with long white hair and green bloodshot eyes suddenly appearing at his feet before it slowly climbs over him and starts to strangle him violently, causing him to wake up suddenly feeling as if a hand was really on his neck. And the problem is the dream kept repeating many times until he decided not to sleep at all, which made him end up in this miserable state so early in the morning. Ashiya was very reluctant to let his lord go and leave him alone near that creepy kid, even though he knew they can't afford it since Mao was the only one working and providing for the two of them while he took care of various chores, or as he would put it, defended the fort, while Mao fought at the front lines. But in reality, he was simply a housekeeper. Mao was still angry at him about yesterday, so he ignored him and gleefully went to work while riding his legendary Dullahan. Or to be more accurate, his bike. When he got to work, which at the M. G. Ronald's restaurant, he went to the men's locker room like usual and changed to his M. G. Ronald's red uniform, consisting of a short-sleeved red t-shirt with a button-up collar, a yellow stripe running across the mid-torso with the company's logo on the right breast, as well as a pair of black pants, a belt, and a matching visor hat, also bearing the M. G. Ronald's logo. When he was done changing into his uniform, he took a deep breath and went to his manager's office, and started knocking on the door and waited. Tap tap tap. A female's voice soon came from the other side saying, "Who's it?" Mao calmly replied, "It's Mao Sadao, can I talk to you for a minute?" The female's voice was surprised a little. "Oh, you are the new guy, huh? You are pretty early today, come in." "Excuse me," said Mao as he opened the door and was greeted by an attractive woman sitting on a chair while going through some documents on her desk. This was Mayumi Kasaki, the manager of the Hatagaya M.G. Ronald branch, where Mao works. She's a tall, fair-skinned woman with chest-length black hair that is tied in a ponytail where it drapes over her left shoulder, with bangs hanging over her forehead, dark blue eyes, and a slim but shapely figure. She was wearing a female manager's uniform, which consists of a red hat, a short-sleeved pale yellow collared shirt, an orange-yellow tie with white stripes, a maroon vest, and a form-fitting navy blue skirt that cuts off just above the knee. "Welcome, Mao-kun. I'm very satisfied with your work ethic and everybody thinks so highly of you. At this rate you will find yourself promoted in no time." Mayumi complimented Mao for his hard work, trying to use some positive reinforcement on him. And the sad thing is it actually worked, because right now this demon lord was so smug while thinking to himself with a twinkle in his blood-red eyes, "Ha ha ha ha, soon I will take over this branch and embark on my journey to conquer this world. Oh humans, tremble at my greatness." But outside he acted like a perfect employee as he humbly bowed and said with a gentle smile, "I will do his best." Nodding in satisfaction, Mayumi looked at him and asked curiously, "So, did you need something?" At this question, Mao rubbed the back of his head embarrassedly and started telling her about the dire situation of the ghost he met yesterday. "You see, I have a neighbor, and he..." Mayumi couldn't help but look at Mao with admiration for his kind-heartedness, trying to help someone he only met for a day because he took pity on his situation. She was also touched by the story and Mao's kind-heartedness, and even though she wanted to help directly, in the end, she was running a business, one that she didn't own and simply worked for just like him, although with a higher position, so she ended up saying, "I don't mind having another worker here, after all, we are slightly short-handed, but I won't accept anyone who doesn't work hard and properly." Mao immediately bowed and said, "Of course, I agree with you, I will take responsibility for him and I will make you will be satisfied." Why's he going so far for someone he just met? Mayumi was getting a little suspicious, but she decided to simply shrug it off and consider him a kind-hearted person. But in reality, only this demon lord knew his real intentions for trying to get that guy to work with him. Meanwhile, back at the Villa Rosa, Yuki ended up oversleeping and only woke up when it was noon. As he stood up from his makeshift bed, he let out a long yawn and started checking the condition of his body, and he was pleasantly surprised when he found out that he wasn't in as much pain as yesterday. I actually feel much better than yesterday. Did something change in my stats? Name, Yuki Chibana, Robin Peterson. Strength, 0.6, 0.9. Speed, 0.6, 0.9. Vitality, 0.3, 0.45, 0.8. Soul, 2. Magic, 0. Mana, 0. Skills, Dark Shield, 1/10, plus. Skill points 1. Description, you are strong enough to survive a simple cold. Oh, so my vitality rose by 0.15, that's why I'm feeling so much better, huh? That's good. It seems rest is really one of the best medicines, he thought, before suddenly his stomach started growling from hunger. Well, yesterday's dinner wasn't much, so of course I would wake up like this. Let's fill up properly this time. And so, he started preparing himself to head out and try to enjoy his time in this new world and fill up his empty stomach. Chapter 10, Going Out, Enjoying the World. Today was the 27th of Mars, and stepping outside of his room's door, Yuki couldn't help but let his sluggish body bask in the warmth of the sun and let the cool breeze of spring wash away any of the tiredness he had left as he started stretching his body in enjoyment. But more importantly, he wanted to make sure that he wasn't really a ghost and would burst into flames at any moment if touched by the light of the sun. After all, he was still depressed by how Amelia ran away from him yesterday and how quickly he finished what he assumed was a very difficult quest thanks to his fitting circumstances. For God's sake, she didn't even run like that from a demon lord, so why me? While he was lamenting his situation, he didn't notice that Ashiya was preparing his lunch, and thanks to the design of this one-room apartment, the kitchen, or what is better described as a cooking space, which is a long counter that was equipped with a stove that Ashiya was using right now, is right below the window that overlooked the corridor. Unfortunately for Ashiya, it was the same window Yuki used to plant his seed in him yesterday. Well, that doesn't sound right. The conclusion is, Yuki was coincidentally standing in front of the same window he used to scare him yesterday, and the first thing this idiot thought when he saw him stretching and moaning in pleasure as he was basking in the weather was that he was trying to curse him or do something else that was evil to him now that he has this opportunity while he was alone in the room. So he quickly hid under the counter in hope that Yuki won't see him and kept watching him like the creep he is. Truly fitting of the saying, an evil person only sees people as a reflection of what's inside of him, and this guy was a demon for sure. After he stretched his shitty body enough and had his enjoyment of this nice weather, Yuki noticed that he didn't have a wooden plaque beside the door with his name written on it like Mao and Ashiya, so he decided to buy one since he was going out anyways. Going out of the building, he went to a convenience store that was around a 5-minute walk from the Villa Rosa building, which is the nearest one, since he didn't want to go too far with his still weak body. After entering, he was greeted by the cashier, who seemed to be a high school girl, probably working here as a part-time job. Welcome, dear Custom Dash, but her voice suddenly cut off as she took a closer at the person or thing that just entered the store, and for some reason, she felt a chill when she saw those deep green sunken eyes and disheveled long and dirty white hair. Sigh, these people are really rude. They don't know how to appreciate the beauty of the soul. This was the thought on Yuki's narcissistic mind, the same Yuki who still considers his current landlord as some lump of purple, a mistake of a painter spilling his ink on the beautiful painting that is this world, and he never tried to think that maybe he should at least try to groom and clean his body before going out again. Well, I'm getting used to it. Yuki couldn't help but feel disappointed since the people of this world kept giving him weird looks throughout his walk to the store. Well, at least no one is calling the cops on me, or maybe an exorcist. I believe in Japan they have on my Oji. Deep in thought, he simply ignored that girl's rude behavior and went on with his business to pick some food, and he ended up buying 3 steamed buns and a bottle of orange juice and went to pay his bill, which came at a total of almost 800 yen. Steamed buns in Japan have many different kinds depending on their filling and the bun itself. There's the juicy pork bun, which is what most people buy, and it was the cheapest one, having a minced pork filling. Then there's the premium pork bun, which is a slightly pricier one than its pork counterpart, as it also contains dried shiitake mushrooms, crisp water chestnut, and large pieces of bamboo shoot, as well as well as being larger in size. There's also the cheesy curry buns and the pizza buns, which are self-explanatory from their names, and then there are the ones he decided to buy, which are the seafood buns that were filled with shrimp, spicy cod roe, and cheese. This bun was more expensive than the previous ones at the price of 240 yen each, but he went with them either way because he really wanted to treat himself and he was a huge lover of seafood. Yuki paid the cashier with a 1,000 yen bill he got from his first quest in this world, and while he was doing so, he noticed that her hand was shaking as she extended it to take the bill from his hand and he couldn't help but frown at this. I really need to fix my appearance, otherwise, not to mention finding a job, someone will probably issue a witch hunt on me. Going out of the convenience store, Yuki remembered how he passed by a beautiful park yesterday while he was searching for an apartment, but he didn't have the time to enjoy the scenery with a system that couldn't wait to fuck him up, so he decided to go there and enjoy his food in this good weather right now since nothing was holding him back. It didn't take him long to get to this park as it was only around a 10-minute walk from the convenience store, and because he was relaxed right now, he couldn't help but find it even more beautiful, especially with the flowers and the cherry blossoms at full bloom, so it was only natural that it was infested with couples and families sitting either on benches or on the ground having picnics, especially since they are on spring break. However, this colorful scene filled with happiness and roses suddenly turned gray the moment Yuki stepped in. As everyone turned their attention on him, the girls clung to their boyfriends closer. The kids that were playing ran back to their parents, and he could almost feel like the sun was also about to mimic them and hide behind the clouds just to add to the drama. What the fuck? Yuki couldn't help but turn and look behind him and see if there was some kind of 5-meter-tall demon standing behind him with his large rod out or something, but there was nothing, and he ended up suffering the biggest hit ever to his ego since his whole 25 years of being alive, a hit even bigger than when Emilia ran away from him. They say some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go, and I think it's very clear in what side of this saying I stand right now. Yuki muttered with a face full of sadness. Letting out a sigh, he started approaching a bench that could seat 3 people and that already had a couple sitting on it, but the place was crowded, and the only thing he could do was share with these happy people, share his dark mood with them, and he's going to do it happily. Yuki suddenly smiled creepily without even noticing as his mind reached such a dark state, so he was surprised when the moment he approached them, they both suddenly stood up with worried faces and the guy even went further and stepped in front of his girlfriend as if he was facing the biggest challenge of his life and was ready to give up his life for her, which made her worried eyes sparkle in delight as she clung to his arm tightly. Geez, what are these idiots doing? Yuki stopped to look at them with a frown for a second before he started approaching them, and when he was close enough and he could see the man sweating heavily, he said, "Can I sit here?" while pointing at the empty spot beside them. The guy started stuttering nervously and said, "Oh, of course, you can have it all to yourself. Yuki couldn't help but tilt his head at this misunderstanding, which caused a few strands of his white hair to cover his face and casting a dark shadow over it as he said, "Oh, no, you don't need to go, you can sit too, it's enough for 3 people. The guy immediately replied, No, we were actually just about to leave, right honey?" He turned to his girlfriend for help and she immediately started nodding and said, Right, we need to go." Yuki shrugged his shoulders at this dramatic duo and simply sat down as he said, "Sweet yourself," before he took out the steamed buns he bought and started enjoying himself while people kept whispering about how he kicked that couple out of their seat and were considering calling the cops on him. However, different from the rest of these judgmental people, a girl that was standing alone under a cherry blossom tree as the petals slowly fell around her, creating a picturesque scene that drew many admiring eyes, kept staring at him with a hint of curiosity on her almost expressionless face. She had a slim figure, pale skin accompanied by brown eyes, and long pale blonde hair that reached her waist, and she was wearing a pink sleeveless dress that ended right under her knees and a white jacket over it. For some reason, she found her artistic mind attracted to the huge contrast between the liveliness of the couples and families and the loneliness of this kid that seemed to be shunned by the whole world around him because of his weird appearance. Yet, what surprised her the most is that he didn't seem to be affected at all and was embracing the grayness he was in, which made her heart ache. And just like that, she completely forgot that she was supposed to wait for her relative that went to get them ice cream and started approaching this kid that seemed to be drowning in pleasure and has entered heaven as he enjoyed those steamed buns. When she was near enough from him, she started taking a closer look at each detail of his appearance, his pale and unhealthy skin, his disheveled long white hair, and his bony jaw that was very defined, but she couldn't help but stop when she looked at his green sunken eyes that were shining in happiness while he was enjoying his food like 2 cursed emeralds. What's this girl doing? Yuki couldn't help but raise his head and look at this girl that he thought at first was just passing by, but then she kept staring at him and seemed to be observing him, but he couldn't detect any fear or nervousness in her eyes like the rest of the people so far. Instead, her eyes contained a simple curiosity that was hidden by her expressionless face, and he couldn't help but admire how beautiful she was. Girl, if you keep staring at me like this, I might end up falling in love. Yuki broke the silence that even he found weird, but this girl seemed determined to keep acting weird till the end as she tilted her head curiously and asked me. Doesn't it bother you? What the hell? Does she have a quest to confuse me, or something? Yuki thought with a puzzled face as he heard this weird question that came out of nowhere, but his expression suddenly changed into an excited one as a notification appeared in front of him. Quest, confused heart.